In a defense laboratory in the hills of northeastern India, a team of government scientists spent years working on a weapon, and the weapon they built was a vegetable. They called it the chili grenade. It is packed with the chemistry of a wrinkled little pepper that grows in the villages around that laboratory, a pepper local farmer's pickle, and put into curries and feed to their children. When the grenade goes off, it does not fragment and it does not burn. It releases a cloud, and everybody inside that cloud stops being a person who can do anything at all. The eyes clamp shut, the airway closes, the hands go to the face. A room full of armed men becomes a room full of coughing. The stated uses were crowd control and forcing hostage takers out of buildings and flushing militants out of caves in the hills. And if that sounds exotic, look at the belt of almost any police officer in the world. That canister holds the same molecule. Pepper spray is a chili extract. We have been arming ourselves with a salad ingredient for 40 years and it barely registers as strange. None of this is a modern idea. When Spanish soldiers came into the Maya lands, the Maya burned chilies upwind of them and let the smoke do the work. Aztec parents punished disobedient children by holding them over a fire of burning chilies, and there is a drawing of it, made in the 1540s, of a father gripping a weeping boy in the smoke. Every single culture that has ever met this plant has understood within about 10 seconds that it is a weapon. And then almost every one of them decided to eat it anyway. Something like a quarter of the adults alive on this planet will eat chili today. On purpose, for pleasure. Many of them will pay extra for the version that hurts more. But the chili's story does not begin in a weapons lab. It begins more than 6,000 years earlier on a thorny bush in South America with a plant that wanted, more than anything else, to be left alone. This is the history of chili peppers. The wild ancestors of this plant still grow in the dry country of Bolivia and Brazil. Small hard berries, bright red, sitting on a thorny bush. Somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 years ago, people in the Americas began planting them on purpose, and the earliest evidence we have of that comes from sites in Ecuador and Mexico. Now, why does a plant do this to you? The answer is not that it hates you. The answer is that it is extremely particular about who eats it. When a mammal eats a chili, it chews. Molars grind the seeds into paste, the seeds die in the mouth, and the plant gets nothing at all out of the transaction. When a bird eats a chili, it swallows the fruit whole. The seeds pass through undamaged and are dropped with a little fertilizer somewhere far away. So the chili needs birds, and it does not need you. And here is the part that should stop you. Birds cannot feel capsaicin. The receptor in a bird does not respond to it. A bird can sit on a branch and eat the hottest pepper on earth like a raisin and feel absolutely nothing, and fly away with a bellyful of seeds. That is not a coincidence. That is a targeted weapon. The chili evolved a chemical that is completely invisible to the animal it wants, and unbearable to the animal it does not. It is not defending itself against the world in general. It is defending itself against you, specifically, and every animal built roughly like you. And it is a bluff. Capsaicin does no damage whatsoever. It does not blister the tissue. It kills no cells. It simply fits exactly into the receptor in your nerve endings, whose one job is to detect dangerous heat, and it pulls the alarm. There is no fire. There is only a molecule holding down a switch, and a brain receiving, in perfect good faith, the most urgent message a body can send. 6,000 years ago in Mexico, a mammal read that warning, understood it completely, and decided that was the appealing part. By the time the Spanish arrived, chili was woven through every part of Mesoamerican life. It was in the food, at every meal. It was tribute and the Aztec tax rolls list. It arriving in the capital in enormous quantities, load after load, hauled in from the provinces. It went into chocolate, which in those days was a dark, bitter-spiced drink for the elite and had nothing to do with sugar. And it went into war, and into punishment and into the smoke. And then, in 1492, a man from Genoa sailed west looking for something else entirely. Because Columbus was not hunting for chilies, nobody in Europe knew chilies existed. He was hunting for black pepper. You have to understand how badly Europe wanted black pepper. It grew in India. It reached a European table through a long chain of middlemen, and by the time it got there, the price had multiplied many times over. Entire fleets and entire national economies were built around the ambition of cutting out the men in the middle. The whole reason a Genoese sailor was standing on a Caribbean beach at all was a peppercorn. He did not find black pepper. He never found it. What he found was a red fruit that set his mouth on fire. And he called it pepper. It is not pepper. It is not related to black pepper. It is not in the same botanical family, not closely, not distantly. Black pepper is a vine from Asia. The chili is a nightshade from the Americas, a cousin of the tomato and the potato. They have nothing whatsoever in common except that they both hurt a little. But look at what Columbus was doing. This is the same man who, having failed to reach India, called the people he met Indians and went to his grave insisting he had done what he was paid to do. He was a man with investors. He needed to have found pepper, so he wrote down that he had found pepper. And the name stuck. It is still stuck. In English, in Spanish, in French, in Hungarian, the name of this plant still carries the fingerprint of one man's very expensive refusal to admit that he was wrong. Europe itself was slow. The first chilies to reach Spain were treated as a curiosity, grown in monastery gardens as an ornamental plant. A German botanist drew one in 1545 and labeled it, of course, Indian pepper. It took Europe decades to work out that the thing in the flower bed was food. And then something happened that nobody in Europe saw coming. In 1498, Vasco da Gama sailed around Africa and reached India, and the Portuguese finally had the sea route to the pepper coast that Columbus had been looking for. In 1510, they took Goa and made it their headquarters in Asia. And into Goa, along with everything else, came the chili off Portuguese ships out of Brazil. Within about 30 years, there were several kinds of chili growing around Goa. Indian cooks, who already understood pungency, took one look at it and knew exactly what to do, and they made something out of it that still exists. The Portuguese had a dish of meat cooked in wine and garlic, and in Goa, the cooks rebuilt it with the ingredients they had. Palm vinegar instead of wine, and a great many dried chilies. That dish is Vindaloo, and it is a Portuguese recipe wearing an Indian coat, and it is one of the most famous curries on earth. Now hold two things in your head at once. The Portuguese had gone to India to get black pepper, and the plant they accidentally carried in their holds went on to shove black pepper out of Indian cooking almost entirely. Because black pepper is a difficult, jealous plant, it is a slow vine. It needs a tropical monsoon. It grew in one narrow region of India and nowhere else, and that scarcity was the entire business model of the spice trade. The chili is a weed. It sets seed in a single season. It grows in a pot on a windowsill. It tolerates poor soil, it dries well, its seeds stay viable for years, and one dried pod contains dozens of them. You do not need a fleet. You do not need a monopoly. You need one pepper and the ability to open it. Black pepper was a currency guarded by warships. The chili was a weed. And the weed won so completely that when European botanists got around to studying it, some of them assumed it must be native to India. And it went the other way too, down the darkest route the Portuguese had. Portugal was running slave trading posts along the coast of West Africa, and it was growing chilies in Brazil, and the ships moved between the two. The chili went into West Africa and was absorbed almost immediately, and then it crossed back over the Atlantic in the holds of slave ships, in the cooking of the people being carried in them. The heat in Caribbean food, the heat in the food of the American South, the Scotch bonnet, the pepper sauce on the table, all of it traveled that route. A plant from the Americas went to Africa, and came back to the Americas in chains. And now, here is the part of this story that most people never learn. Every cuisine you think of as fiery is younger than you think. Vastly younger. Sichuan cooking, the food that people cross continents to eat and cry into, does not have chili in the local records until the 1740s. Before that, Sichuan had numbing peppercorns and ginger, but the red oil, the wall of fire that now defines the whole tradition, is a late arrival, and the famous numbing heat is a fusion of an American import with a Chinese native. Korean kimchi was not red. Chili reaches the peninsula somewhere around the turn of the 17th century, and the historians still argue about the root. Gochujang and the scarlet kimchi that is now the national color of Korean food come later still. Hungarian paprika arrives through Ottoman trade in the 1500s and takes another 2 centuries to become the national emblem it is today. Ethiopian Berber has no chili in it before the 1600s. Thai food, before the Portuguese, was getting its heat from peppercorns and ginger and galangal. Every one of those cuisines will tell you the chili is theirs, that it is ancient, that it is the soul of the nation, and every one of them is describing an immigrant that showed up after Shakespeare was born. Notice how strange that is, because the other things on those same ships did not manage it. The tomato arrived in Europe from the Americas and was regarded with open suspicion for something like 200 years. It was grown as an ornament. It was rumored to be poisonous. The potato had to be pushed on peasants by governments who practically tricked them into eating it. Both of those are the chili's close relatives. Same family, same continent, same boats. The chili needed no persuasion at all. It walked into Asia and Africa and was absorbed in decades because, unlike the tomato, it was not asking anybody to try a new idea. It was offering a cheap version of something people already wanted and could not afford and had been importing at ruinous prices for 1,000 years. You will hear a tidier explanation than that. The idea is that hot cuisines developed in hot countries because chili kills the bacteria in food that spoils fast. And that spicy cooking is really a food safety technology. There is a real piece of research behind that, and it gets repeated everywhere as settled fact. It is not settled. The evidence is argued over hard, and a much duller explanation fits just as well, which is that chili grows best where it is hot, and people eat what grows next to them. Be careful with any story that makes human beings sound that rational, because there is a simpler reason, and it is not rational at all. It hurts, and the hurting feels good. We appear to be the only animal that does this. You cannot persuade a rat to like chili. Offer it, and the rat avoids it forever, because the rat's alarm is going off and the rat believes it. Researchers call what humans do benign masochism. The body screams that it is being injured. The mind knows, with total confidence, that it is not. And in the gap between the alarm and the safety, something in us lights up. We are the only animal that has learned to enjoy being lied to. In 1868, on a salt dome in the Louisiana marsh, a ruined southern planter looking for something to sell began mashing small red peppers with salt, aging them in barrels, and cutting the result with vinegar. He put it in a slim bottle. That sauce is still made in the same place, by the same family, and it is on tables from Manila to Reykjavik. In 1876, chemists isolated the compound itself and gave it a name, capsaicin, and in 1912, a pharmacist named Wilbur Scoville had a problem. He worked for a drug company that made a muscle rub containing pepper extract, and he needed to know how strong a batch was. There was no machine that could tell him. There was no instrument anywhere in the world that could measure pungency. So he used people. He took the extract, dissolved it in sugar water, and diluted it again, and kept going, handing it to a panel of tasters after every dilution until they could no longer detect any heat at all. However many times you had to cut it, that was the number. If it took 16,000 dilutions before the burn vanished, the pepper scored 16,000. That is the Scoville scale. That is where the numbers on the side of a hot sauce bottle come from. And for most of the 20th century, the entire global measurement of chili heat rested on a handful of human tongues and a majority vote. The plant was also busy being useful. In Hungary, where paprika had become an industry, a scientist named Albert Szent-Györgyi realized in the 1930s that the local peppers were extraordinarily rich in a substance he had been struggling to isolate in quantity. He had an entire region of the country growing his raw material. He extracted vitamin C from paprika in bulk, and in 1937 he won the Nobel Prize in medicine for it. Hold on to that, because this plant is not finished with the Nobel Committee. But first, the number became a scoreboard. Once you can score a pepper, you can beat a pepper. And so breeders began crossing plants with a single goal, which was not flavor and was not yield and was not disease resistance. It was the number. The habanero fell. A hybrid called the Red Savina took the record in the 90s. In 2007, a pepper from northeastern India, the ghost chili, became the first ever measured above 1 million units. Then a scorpion pepper from Trinidad. Then, in 2013, a grower in South Carolina bred something he named the Carolina Reaper, and it came in somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million. In 2023, the same man released another one, hotter still. None of these are foods. Nobody cooks with a Carolina Reaper. They are trophies. They exist to be the number. And an industry grew up around the number, and that industry was built on dares, coffins on the packaging, skulls, warnings printed as bait, because a warning is an advertisement if you sell it to the right person. One of those products was a single tortilla chip, dusted with Carolina Reaper and Naga Viper, sold on its own in a coffin-shaped box with a skull on the front. You ate it, and then you saw how long you could last before drinking anything. It was called the One Chip Challenge. It was everywhere. Children were bringing it to school. On the 1st of September 2023, in Worcester, Massachusetts, a 14-year-old boy named Harris Woolabar ate one. A friend gave it to him. He went to the school nurse with a stomachache and was sent home. That afternoon, he collapsed and he did not recover. The medical examiner found that he died of cardiopulmonary arrest after eating a food with a very high concentration of capsaicin, and also found that he had an enlarged heart and a heart defect that nobody had known about. The product was pulled from shelves within days and discontinued. That plant had been sending exactly one message in the same language without variation for millions of years. Do not eat this. It had built the message with extraordinary precision and aimed it directly at animals like us. We turned the message into a scoreboard, and a child died reading it correctly. Now go back to the alarm. In 1997, a laboratory in San Francisco, led by a scientist named David Julius, went looking for the receptor that capsaicin acts on. It was not really a study about peppers, it was a study about pain. Nobody at that point knew in molecular terms how a human being detects that something is burning them, so they used the chili as a key to find the lock. And they found it, a single channel in the membrane of the nerve endings, which opens to dangerous heat, opens to acid, and opens to capsaicin. That protein is why a chili and a scald feel like the same thing, because to your nervous system, they are the same thing. In 2021, David Julius was awarded the Nobel Prize in medicine for it. The chili did not merely trick us for 10,000 years, it handed us the map. The plant's own poison was the key that opened the question of how a human being feels heat and pain at all. And then, medicine did something the plant would consider extremely rude. If you flood a nerve ending with an enormous dose of capsaicin, the receptor fires and keeps firing until the fiber gives up and stops working. So there is now a patch loaded at a concentration unthinkable in food, applied under anesthetic to people living with nerve pain that no ordinary drug will touch. It hurts to put on, and then, for weeks afterwards, the pain is quiet, and the plant kept arriving with people. In 1980, a Vietnamese refugee who had fled by boat started a chili sauce company in Los Angeles and named it after the freighter that carried him out. He put a rooster on the bottle because he was born in the year of the rooster, and he never advertised, not once. That sauce became one of the most recognizable food products in America, and the green cap and the rooster are now on tables in countries the man never visited. Which is, when you look at it, the entire story of this plant in miniature. It moves with people who are moving. It costs almost nothing, nobody markets it, and it wins anyway. Which brings us, at last, to now. Chili is the most widely grown spice on the planet. India alone produces something like a quarter of the world's supply and is the largest producer, consumer, and exporter of it on Earth. The hot sauce aisle of an ordinary supermarket contains more heat than the entire continent of Europe encountered before 1500. We also handed it to the state. Through the 1980s and 90s, police forces across the world adopted pepper spray as a humane alternative to force, on the reasoning that it does no lasting harm. Which is chemically true, and which is also, as anybody who has been sprayed will tell you, entirely beside the point. It is the plant's original trick, deployed by a government, a signal with no injury behind it, and a body that cannot tell the difference. And the same compound sits in a canister on a police officer's belt, and in a grenade in an Indian armory, and in a jar of flakes above your stove. It is a condiment, and it is a chemical weapon. And there is no chemical difference between them. There is only the dose. So think back for a moment on the whole journey. A thorny bush in the dry scrub of South America, hung with small red berries, carrying a chemical perfected over millions of years to say one word to animals like us. And the word was no. Birds that could not hear it, carrying the seeds away. Aztec tribute rolls and chocolate spiked with fire, and a child held weeping over the smoke. A Genoese sailor who failed to find black pepper and refused to say so, and named the wrong plant forever. A weed that beat a currency. Sichuan and Korea and Hungary and Ethiopia, every one of them rebuilt around a foreigner that arrived after Shakespeare was born. A pharmacist in 1912 measuring pain with 5 tongues and a vote. A boy in Massachusetts who died on a dare, a Nobel Prize, and finally, a quarter of the adults. Alive on this planet, eating it today, on purpose for pleasure. It is one of the most extraordinary stories any single plant has ever written across human history. And the strangest part of all is how ordinary it feels now. The molecule that sits in a riot canister and a hand grenade is the same molecule sitting in a jar of red flakes on your kitchen shelf, and it is waiting for you tonight in that jar, or in a bottle, in the door of the fridge with somebody's cartoon devil printed on it. You will shake it over your food without a second thought, and it will scream at you that you are on fire, and you will smile and take another bite. But now you know what you are really holding. If this story surprised you, subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden histories behind the everyday things all around you. Drop a like if you learned something new, and leave a comment telling me which part of the chili story surprised you the most. There is a lot more history waiting to be crushed.